Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Shadow of Kyoshi chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 4, which is called The Reunion. So this is a very small chapter, not too much to talk about here. It pretty much is just about one thing. So Jinpa and Kyoshi are of course flying to the Fire Nation. They basically arrive in this chapter, and obviously the person who is first to meet them is Rangi, and so we have the reunion between Kyoshi and Rangi, but the chapter basically ends like just as they kind of meet each other. So we just get their like initial reunion, and then the catching up is going to happen like as we go forward, pretty much. So the only other thing in the chapter is just the sort of description stuff at the start about the Fire Nation. Just the idea of, a string of active volcanoes, because of course the Fire Nation is made up of fire islands. It's not just one landmass, it's a bunch of different islands, which is going to be significant going forward with regards to the politics of the Fire Nation. What politics does it have, given that they have one ruler and it's a relatively small place? Well, it relates to the history of the place, that each of these islands before they were united had leaders of their own, and that's what we're going to kind of explore as we get into this. So we have them just kind of in the air, getting a nice kind of aerial view of the Fire Nation, and we get a bunch of place names here. Capital Island, of course, is the name of the main landmass of the Fire Nation, the capital. First Lord's Harbour, of course, we saw that. That's basically where a lot of these sort of initial stages of the invasion back in ATLA happened. And so on, and we get like stuff like, because there's a festival going on, red paper lanterns in the air, and there's just a nice moment of kind of Kyoshi wishing she could go down there and kind of join the party with her fellow commoners, because she's heading off to the capital to meet with the Fire Lord, but she still is much more like the normal people still. Like that, she's Dao Fei, she doesn't like the rulers of pretty much anywhere, so that definitely fits her character, just those type of stuff that's going on here. Kyoshi surprisingly knows exactly how to handle this, because she worked in the Avatar Mansion, so she knows how the sort of nobles and like preparing for nobles goes, and she's like, okay, set down near the gate but not too close. They like to make a big thing about the entrance, so they kind of set Yin Yang down just a little bit before that. A few other things here. Royal Caldera City is of course the name of the capital city. We already knew that, but it's one of those like details that isn't said in the show, so not that many fans know. So that's nice to have it included here to kind of fully clarify that. The only other thing would be, from the aerial view, they get a look at some of the lakes in the bowl of the caldera, basically around the city. There's one large one and then a bunch of smaller ones, and Kyoshi basically just says she'd forgotten their official names, but outside of the Fire Nation, they were often referred to as the Queen and her daughters. So the few aerial shots we get of the sort of capital city from the air, you can see those lakes, so you can tell FCE did his research into sort of what background scenery of the Fire Nation capital we've got, and used that to inform most of his description stuff here. Because like we get explanation of like the sort of battlements and stuff like that, the watchtowers they have up all over the place. Because of course it's the capital of the Fire Nation. It's also heavily fortified military-wise as well. So yeah, pretty much after this point they set down, and without too much happening, immediately the gate begins to move, and it says here, a girl stood on the other side, revealed by inches, as if she were too much person, too much force for any one mortal to handle all at once. Sometimes Kyoshi believed that. In her mind, the grand scape of Caldera City and the royal palace was nothing compared to the splendor being unveiled right now. It's of course Rangi, of course. The gate finished its agonizing journey with a heavy metallic slam. The archway inside was lit with torches, none of which shone as bright as the pair of bronze eyes that flickered over Kyoshi from head to toe. Other than wearing the armor of a higher-ranking officer that had fewer spikes and overhanging flaps and more gold trim, Rangi looked the same. Her ink-black hair had grown back to its usual length. Her posture was as stiff and unyielding as Kyoshi remembered. So Rangi as we expect, but she's obviously got a bit of a promotion here, and her hair has grown back after it was cut off when she was taken, of course, at the end of the last book. So that's all good. And so, there's a little bit of sort of like, oh, what's it going to be like? Because, of course, a lot of fans of this relationship were kind of worried just because of the wording of a lot of the stuff that happened towards the end of the book, like around their relationship, of kind of like, they had to leave each other for now because, of course, Rangi had to go to her mother up to the Northern Water Tribe, and Kyoshi had to continue her reveal as the Avatar. So they had to sort of go their separate ways temporarily. And it was like, when they see each other again after who knows how long, would they be the same people again? It was like, why were they ending this relationship right here? But no, absolutely not. We already know Kyoshi from the last chapter is desperate to see Rangi, and it turns out it's the exact same from the other side as well. And Kyoshi worries that, oh, is Rangi a former everything? Former teacher, former bodyguard, former girlfriend type thing? But no, not at all. It's actually a really funny moment here that reveals something about Rangi from the previous book, which I actually quite like. It's a nice detail. Where is it here? The stillness of the moment was broken by a strange noise that Kyoshi had heard only once before, Rangi laughing and choking at the same time. The firebender slumped over, leaning her hand against the nearest wall, and gasped for breath like she'd been holding it since the gate cracked open. I had to sprint over here, all the way across the grounds, so I could look impressive greeting you. I must be out of shape. And Kyoshi realizes that, this explains it. This explains why Rangi is always like early for all of these sort of meetings and stuff like that. Why she's always there looking perfect is not because she actually prepares way ahead of time and gets there early and just stands there. No, she goes at the same time as everyone else. She just like sprints everywhere so she can sort of look more impressive when she gets there. That's actually just a really fun character trait of sort of like, oh, Rangi sort of maybe tries a little bit too hard to look more superior to everyone. But that's just a fun dynamic. And Kyoshi says, knowing she'd simply been running at top speed from place to place hurt the mystique a little. But Rangi grinned and nodded as she caught her breath. At least I don't have to worry about the other Fire Nationals seeing me right now. The only blind spot in the defenses is right here, directly under the gate, which means I can do this. She reached up and yanked Kyoshi inside the wall right into a searing kiss. So, any questions, if there's any issues with their relationship, gone right now. They're right back together straight away. So that's that. And yeah, like there's not too much to analyze here. It's a nice description of the Fire Nation from the aerial shot, because they come in on a Sky Bison, of course, and Kyoshi and Rangi get to meet again, and it's straight back into things as they were. We'll see, of course, as they get to talking, how we acknowledge maybe if the characters have actually changed or anything like that. But yeah, this chapter is short to the point, but it accomplishes what it needs to do. For big fans of this ship, they'll very much appreciate this chapter, of course. I definitely enjoy their ship. The only thing that makes me sort of like not fully kind of maybe jump in on it like 100% is just that because of the way these two books overall end for the series, and the fact that Rangi isn't like mentioned or like obviously included in any of the content that we have of Kyoshi past these books, it does sort of feel weird, and it's the general like criticism I'd maybe have of the two books, of like just the scope of them and them only deciding to be like teenage stuff, when we could use this same level of depth covering some of that stuff from later on in her life, adding in a lot of the details that the books have actually introduced at this point. Mainly like Rangi being a very important person in her life who just seems to be not around, I guess, or not somewhere else during all the other incidents. And then of course Coco adds so much confusion to sort of everything, in that that's probably the most unexplained part of Kyoshi's life at this point. But yeah, it's a nice chapter. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this chapter. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.